Hey, aloha, everybody, and welcome to our fifth edition of the second season of Coffee with Coach. And we have a loaded show for you today. Going to talk about the draft again. We're going to stack our board with offensive tackles, and there are some really, really good ones on the board. And then we're going to get into a conversation about free agency with one of the super agents in the NFL, Paul Sheehy from Pro Star Sports in Denver, will join us live. Make sure you, whether it's Ali talking about the draft or Michael and I chopping it up, or Paul, if you want to get into the show, you want to throw a question at us, hit us live. We do not give you any time on this show unless you're willing to tell us where you are from. All right. So let's get right at it. Got to talk about this, Mike, right off the top. It's been a incredibly controversial week and a controversial offseason surrounding Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson traded from the Texans to the Browns. Huge get for the Texans in terms of draft capital, 3 first-round picks in the next 3 years, a third rounder and a fourth rounder. This is one that's really, really a difficult one. Obviously, in the United States and hopefully in all the world, you're innocent until proven guilty. There was not enough, and I guess the police didn't believe there was enough evidence to bring him to trial on the allegations of sexual misconduct, over 20 allegations of sexual misconduct. However, he still has to face the NFL disciplinary committee, and he is being involved in civil suits with over 20 of those people. So it is unsure whether he's going to play. One of the things about the trade, and I think there's been some pushback on this thing on a lot of fronts, from the morality front, from the owners. A number of other owners in the league are really upset about this contract because there's so much guaranteed money involved. It's not a fully guaranteed contract, but there are 2 reasons why they're up in arms, Mike. And I think this is interesting. What's happening now is the NFL, one of the reasons that they did not give guaranteed contracts is because it unevened the playing field between the haves and the have-nots, or the people that were willing to spend and the ones that weren't willing to spend. Because anytime a contract was guaranteed, it had to be put into escrow. There are a lot of reasons, which Paul will get into. But now what's happening with these huge guaranteed quarterback contracts, it makes it tough on the teams that don't have that kind of financial wherewithal to just write those huge checks right out the gate. So I think this one's going to be, the NFL is going to have to take a look at how this is starting to unbalance the playing field. And then also you've got the issue, for the Browns, that's a lot of first-round capital to give up for a guy who has not played in over 2 years. Now, a lot of people think he's one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league right now. I have tendency to believe that he is. But this is an interesting one. What's your take on it, Mike?
First off, good evening, Jeff. It is great to see you. Great to have you back on Twitter again. I was going to do the whole intro. We ain't going nowhere, but I'll not do it. Great to have you back on social media again. Thanks to everyone for the support last week as well. I think it's intriguing because there's so many elements. He will face a ban, surely, from the NFL. How many games is that going to be? The fully guaranteed deal is just, it's big money. And I know the cap's going up, but that's a lot of money. And it just shows you what teams will do to get their quarterback in terms of the morality statement of it, or the moral discussion about it. I've seen Arthur Blank came out today at the owners' meetings in Palm Beach or Palm Springs and said that they met with him for an hour and 15 minutes and he left it at that. I think we're not going to hear, I don't think we're going to hear the full story for a long time in terms of what the Browns.
Here's another reason why some people are really disappointed in what the Browns did. Basically, what they did by moving his money into guaranteed money, they sheltered him from losses that he may take. Let's say the NFL suspends him for 10 games or whatever. Then he would lose 1/10 of his salary during that period of time. So what he's going to be paid now, even though over 180 million of that is guaranteed, his contract for this coming year will only be his base will only be a little over $1 million. So he would only stand to lose a per game percentage of that $1 million if he's suspended. So that really puts him at minimal financial risk, which when teams start to do these kind of things, they really usurp the NFL's disciplinary teeth, right? They take the teeth out of the. So you suspend him for 6 games. Hurts the team because he's not on the field, but the team protects him from any financial loss, which I don't think is again, that's not I think positive for the National Football League and positive for him personally or for the Browns. That's another one of the reasons why this thing was so controversial. But enough about Deshaun Watson. Let's get on talk about the NFL rule changes, Michael. We are now going to have, if it's in the playoffs and a game end of this game ends in regulation time, it's tied, right? We've got new playoff format for overtime. Both quarterbacks, both teams will have a chance at possession of the football, not in the regular season, but only in the postseason. What do you think?
I love it because first off, I think my team will be in the postseason. And secondly, look at the Bills Chiefs game. That game was incredible. You almost felt for the Bills at the end of it, thinking they should have been able to possess the football again. I think it's the right time to bring it in. I was interested to see they're not going to bring it in during the regular season, but I guess when it really matters in the postseason, and look, it's ironic and it's literally fate that this is going to happen in the first game of postseason.
Well, I'd say 2 things. I felt it was going to happen because, we've seen how unfair it is in the postseason, right? Who's to say that the Bills wouldn't have gone down and scored again? But I do understand why they waited it for the postseason, not in the regular season, because they want to get the players off the field as fast as they can during the regular season because of the threat of injury. The mentality changes when you get to the playoffs. It's one and done football. It's a much different scenario. So I think it's a great move by the National Football League. I think it's positive for the league and positive for the game. The Ravens, if you're a Ravens fan, you've got John Harbaugh, 3 more years in Baltimore. Big news for Lamar Jackson. He should feel good. He should feel confident now going forward with his negotiations that the coach that really, really, sold out for him, drafted him in the first round, really designed his offense around the skill set that Lamar Jackson possesses. Now he's going to have that guy in his corner for 3 more years. So I would expect, if you're a Ravens fan, that's really good news. For the Saints, Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle returns. He's going to New Orleans. How about him getting guaranteed money? Times are changing, buddy. He's going to be a backup, obviously, for Jameis Winston. The interesting part of that thing, though, is, Michael, it looks like Taysom Hill will now go specifically to tight end. The Sean Payton toy that he was, where they played him all over the field. I think that's going to be good for Taysom Hill. He gets a chance to grow and become what I think will be a real good move tight end. He's a great athlete. And how about your Patriots? Jabril Peppers going to New England. If anybody can unlock Jabril Peppers, because now this is the 3rd team for Jabril Peppers, right? So drafted by Cleveland, goes to the Giants. He's going to the Patriots. He's never played to the level people thought he would be. And part of that is he's kind of a tweener. But if anybody can unlock his potential and anybody can find a scheme fit for him, it'll be Bill Belichick and that defense in New England. So I think it's a good move for the Patriots and a good move for Jabril Peppers. And more Patriot news, the old man, the boss, the guy who signs the checks, Mr. Kraft, says he's not pleased about not winning a playoff game in 3 years. So
they should maybe sign some players in. I mean, the Bar Peppers had done nothing the last month, and Belichick came out yesterday and said, "Here, talking about players, we got to talk about the draft." I will say one thing before we bring Ollie in. You're talking about the Saints. Another backup from the Saints went to Chicago. Trevor Siemian is a backup in Chicago as well. Nice. So it's silly season, Jeff. It's here. We're a month out from the draft. Can you believe it?
Well, and I tell you what, there's a lot that's going to come down. right? And we're going to talk about the draft in total, but I'm going to tell you something. Don't be surprised if you don't see a lot of teams trading back to get more picks because of the fact the depth of this draft at certain positions. So you may not want a first rounder. You may want to say, okay, I'll take a high second round and give me another third or fourth, because there's going to be a lot of really good football players later in the draft. And let's go to our draft expert, Coffee with the Coach's draft expert, and he is sartoriously splendiferous in his University of Hawaii throwback t-shirt back in the Rainbow Warrior Dick Tomey days. I love it. I love it. Ali, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, Jeff. I thought it was only right to dig the Hawaii shirt out. You know, every week I get to speak to you with that splendiferous background that you have. I thought, well, do you know what? It's about time I paid you some respect rather than just this terrible background. Let's put some colour in with the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors.
We got to talk. We got to talk to Pro Football Network and get you a green screen or something back there, man. We got
See what we can do.
Before we talk about tackles, let's talk about the comment that I just made about teams trading back in this draft because of the fact that there's so much depth at so many positions. You know, you talk about, obviously there's a ton of receivers, there's tight end depth, there's tackle depth, there's pass rusher depth. So if you don't have a guy that really, really impacts a need area that you have, I think it makes perfect sense to trade back and get more picks, because you're going to get in the second, third, fourth, fifth rounds, I think even this year, you're going to get access to some really good players.
Yeah, I was talking about this earlier, that all the way through into day 3, and you mentioned round 4, round 5, you're going to be able to get instant impacts, starting potential players for the NFL level in this 2022 NFL draft class. And we've already started to see it. The New York Jets and the New York Giants, who already own 2 first-round picks, are talking about trading down in the first round to try and get more later-round capital. And those 2 teams aren't short of capital either. When you look at a team like the Baltimore Ravens, you mentioned Harbaugh just then while you were talking with Mike, they're a team that have already got 4 fourth-round picks in this 2022 NFL draft. They're going to be a team that are going to be extremely well set up come the end of April, start of May, with the capital that they've got in that sort of middle of the 2022 NFL draft. And I think when you look at the quarterbacks arms race, you know, we've talked about Malik Willis several times on this show. Someone could potentially trade up to get Malik Willis to leapfrog the Carolina Panthers, to leapfrog the Seattle Seahawks. Pittsburgh Steelers are still in a situation where they need a quarterback. Atlanta, you know, there's a lot that will ride on the quarterback class. So there's a lot of potential for trades. And I think you're right. I think before the draft and even on draft day itself, I think we'll see a lot of movement from where we are at the moment with the official running order of the 2022 NFL draft.
You know, I think about the Lions, for example. Now, here's a team that has massive needs, right? Massive needs. Any of the teams that are in that situation where they're rebuilding and they need players at every position. If you took that second pick, and let's say somebody covets somebody really highly and feels like they need to get to 2 to get that pick, to get that guy, trade back, get more picks, because you've got so many multiple needs. And I know everybody's in love with Aiden Hutchinson. And again, we're getting off topic a little bit, but it's the draft, so it's on topic. It's just not tackles. But man, oh man, oh man, I'm going to tell you something. If you have multiple needs, this is your draft, because there's a lot of good players that'll last deep into the draft, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, with the Lions, because they haven't put out a lot of noise about quarterbacks. You know, Dan Campbell coached Malik Willis at the Senior Bowl, so he's got first-hand exposure to Malik Willis. Well, normally, if you're a team that is looking to garner a lot of interest in your pick because they think you might take that player, you'd make a hell of a lot of noise. The Lions would be going, "Oh, do you know what? We're going to take Malik Willis and force that the value of that second overall pickup." But they're not making a lot of noise about it, which is intriguing, especially at this stage. You know, Michael referenced it. We're only a month out from the NFL draft, and the noise has been made by teams like the Jaguars, and the talk about, will they take Trayvon Walker instead of Aiden Hutchinson? And let me be clear, I'm not sold on Aiden Hutchinson as being the first overall pick in this draft. I think in a deep edge class. He's not this runaway number one prospect that not everyone, but a lot of people are making Aiden Hutchinson out to be. So there's a lot that could happen.
Ali, I'm with you, man. I'm not sure he's the best edge player projected to the National Football League. I think there's some holes in his game. But
yeah, for sure.
Let's get to the big nasties, the guys that are going to make a lot of money. And when I went through the tackles, let me just tell you something, buddy. There are some mammoth human beings playing college football, playing tackle in the college football. Because I counted in the guys the pool that I looked at, I counted over a dozen that are taller than 6'5". And 6'5" used to be like, if you got a guy that was 6'5", that was wow. Now 6'8", 6'7", 6'9". I mean, they're monstrous, mammoth people playing tackle in college football.
And not just the size of them as well, the athletic ability that comes with that. You used to be a time where a 6'6", 6'7" offensive tackle would be a lumbering player. You think of some of the tight ends we've talked about it. The bigger tight ends you think of being quite lumbering. But some of these guys are as athletic as it comes, and that's the scary part. We're looking at 6'7", 6'8", 340-pound guys who can move, really move, and not just in a straight line, but laterally as well. So there's a lot of exciting talent there.
It's phenomenal to me how good athletes have gotten in the last 20 years. It's incredible. Well, let's get at it. Let's get talk. Who you got at number 5? Who's your guy? Let's get going.
Okay, so number 5, my 5th ranked offensive tackle and 47th overall ranked prospect at this moment in time, with less than a month to the NFL draft, is Minnesota offensive tackle Daniel Faalele. The Australian kid, I'm in love with this kid. In terms of, we talk about size, 6'8" and 1/8 of an inch, 387 pounds. Look at him. Look at that guy. 387 pounds. And he has been bigger than that, unbelievably. When he landed on these shores from Australia, I say these shores, obviously American shores, he's weighed in at times at over 400 pounds. You talk about a mammoth of a guy, and that's what Daniel Faalele is. 35, nearly 35 and a half inch arms, 11-inch hands. He is the epitome of an immovable object. You can't run through this kid. He's like a mountain. You can't simply run around him either. The length allows him to manipulate his opponent. You watch him when he gets his arms locked out. There is literally nothing that any edge rusher in this class can do to get into his chest plate. Those arms, 35 and 3/8 inch arms. Incredible, strong, impressive anchor, powerful, vicious punch. I watched him on tape single-handedly knock a guy to the ground with that powerful, impactful punch, which is exactly what you want to see for your offensive tackle. We talked about athletic ability. He's not the most athletic offensive tackle in this class. At that size, he's never going to be, but he's got decent athleticism. You watch Minnesota line him up at the fullback position and run him in for a touchdown. He's a battering ram in that respect. There's issues with Daniel Faalele. I know you were certainly surprised when I sent these my top 5 offensive tackles over to see where Daniel Faalele was, because a lot of this ranking is projected upon what Daniel Faalele can be rather than what he is right now, because he is inexperienced. He turned up at high school in the States, having never played a down of football, had never seen a game of football. But he caught the eyes of some college scouts over and high school scouts over in Australia at satellite camp. So he is inexperienced. For a guy of his size, he is unbalanced at times because he is, there's a lot of weight that he's got to be able to control. So often he lunges, he leans, doesn't bend at the knees, he bends at the waist, just as a pure byproduct of his size, and that causes issues in terms of his balance. Pad level is always going to be an issue with a kid that is 6'8", over 6'8" tall. But I think there's things that are coachable. There are issues that are coachable with Daniel Faalele's game when you get him into an NFL program, and I think that's the exciting thing with this kid is he's a decent offensive tackle at the college level. He's got the potential, if coached correctly, to be an absolute stud at the NFL level at the right tackle position. And there's not a lot of natural right tackles in this class. There's a lot of offensive tackle talent, but there's not a lot of guys at the right tackle position who are a natural right tackle. And I think that, again, that's something that's exciting to consider with Daniel Falele.
Well, we talk about fit, why fit's so important. And if you are in a power running scheme, I'm thinking of, we're talking about the Ravens here a little bit earlier. You got to look at this guy and go, we got to get this guy, because he is a dominant player in the run game. I agree with you. I'm not big on some of the movement skills. I don't like waist benders. But again, you don't see guys 6'8", and I don't know what he weighs. I mean, he weighs the whole building. I mean, he is huge. And and I'll tell you, I like him for another reason. That name Falele, that's a Samoan name, and so he's got Polynesian roots. And we all know that there have been some tremendous Polynesian players that have played in the National Football League, Jesse Sapolo being one. And I really, really am rooting for this kid, because he does have there's a couple of these guys in that tackle class that have some interesting stories and interesting histories on their way to the National Football League draft. So who you got it for?
So at number 4, I've got Northern Iowa's Trevor Penning. Now, we've seen him in last year's class, Northern Iowa, small school, FCS school. I shouldn't call them a small school. I've got in trouble directly from schools before, because they go, well, do you know what? We've got thousands of students. They're a smaller school in football in terms. But they've got already developing a reputation for producing athletic freaks. There's no other way of putting it. Athletic freaks, strong guys, offensive tackles. You look at Spencer Brown, who was drafted by the Bills last year. Trevor Penning's better. For a lot of people, I know there's NFL scouts who value Trevor Penning more than the kids that are in front of him that we're going to talk about shortly, without giving any names away. But Penning, similar to Falele, big guy, 6'7", just over 6'7", 325 pounds. He's got that requisite arm length that we talk about. Look at those big long levers, 34.25-inch arms, just over 10-inch hands. So he's the NFL size that you talk about right there with Trevor Penning. Impressive athlete, explosive, good lateral mobility. I think one of the key things with Trevor Penning is he's powerful. Great grip strength. Once he gets hold, you are not escaping this kid. And we saw it at the Senior Bowl. He is a bully. There is not a player in this class who plays the game with more ferocity, nastiness, savagery, however you want to call it. That's what Trevor Penning plays the game with. Now, the issue here is, where do you draw the borderline between what is and isn't acceptable? Because we saw some stuff at the Senior Bowl out of Trevor Penning, which was blurring the lines between what you should and shouldn't do on a football field, including him, I don't want to say smashing Ohio State defensive end Tyreek Smith's head into the turf, but hell, that's what it looked like. So there's some issues there in terms of, will his play style result in excessive penalties at the NFL level? Again, tall guy, high pad level, that's an issue that he needs to rectify before he become a true starting left tackle in the NFL. And on his college tape, playing at the level that he did, you kind of almost feel like there was a feeling that he knew he was better than the opposition that were around him. And you question sometimes some of the motor that he played the game with at the college level. Now, obviously, when he gets up to the NFL, he'll know he's got to play consistently with a hot motor every single play. But, as you're looking at college tape and assessing players, evaluating players on that college tape, it's certainly something that stands out when you're watching Trevor Penning.
I agree with you. I thought he had a tendency against low-level competition, which he played some of because he's an FCS player, that he would play with guys rather than finish guys. And then other times he'd just destroy people. And I think what we saw at the Senior Bowl was what he was coached to do by his people, because he needed to go in there and show that he belonged and he was tough enough and he wasn't going to back down. And he took it to another level. You're exactly right. Yeah. Sometimes his aggressiveness, I think, gets him into trouble, but I'd rather have one that you got to pull back than one you got to kick in the pants to go. So, I like that kid a lot. Now, these next three, I think, can all be first rounders, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like I said then about Trevor Penning, there is very much the feeling that he's a first rounder as well. A lot of teams talking about him not getting out of the top 10 picks. So you're looking at 4 guys. I think these next 2 guys are interchangeable, really, in terms of where they fit in this whole 2022 NFL draft class. So my offensive tackle 3 currently, Charles Cross. He's my 8th overall ranked prospect. Very different look to Charles Cross than you've seen from Daniel Falele and Trevor Penning. A little bit shorter, 6'3" and 3/4. So he's not short by any stretch of the imagination, but he's shorter than those 2 behemoths. Also noticeably more slender than the 2 guys before him. So Falele, 387 pounds, Penning, 325 pounds, Charles Cross, 307 pounds. So he's a little bit more of a slender offensive tackle than the other 2 guys. But again, 34.5-inch arms, 10 3/4-inch hands. So the size requisites are there for the NFL level. What you get with Charles Cross is a superb athlete. That slenderness allows him to be incredibly athletic, both in terms of getting out to the second level in the run game, which admittedly not been asked to do a lot of at Mississippi State in Mike Leach's very predominant passing offense. But when he does get out in the run game, he can get out to the next level superbly well. He's explosive out of his stance. He glides into his pass sets as well. He's got the reactive lateral athleticism to counter, to combat any counter moves as well. Some of the issues with some of the other guys that we see in this class is their susceptibility to speedier pass rushes. But for a guy like Charles Cross, he's got that reactive athleticism to be able to pick up those counters. He's intelligent, so he's constantly in communication with the rest of his offensive line, which we know is such a key component of offensive line success, is that communication and the cohesiveness as an offensive line. Picks up stunts, picks up twists, you name it. Charles Cross can pick it up. And I think through this season, he's really improved his game as well. He's really improved in terms of his hand placement. He's got a potent punch, but he was prone to mistiming and misplacing of his hands. I think he's cleaned that up in his game this year. And don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by the slender nature of this kid. He's as savage and as destructive as any of the other guys in this class.
Bonus points for playing in the SEC because he's playing against the best pass rushers, the best defensive linemen in America, week in and week out. I agree with that's a great evaluation. Now let's go to the ACC for the next guy.
Let's go to the most feared offensive lineman in the ACC. That's what he was dubbed as at the start of this year. Ikem Ekwonu out of NC State. He's my 2nd overall ranked offensive tackle and my 7th overall prospect. A kid who played both guard and tackle last season, 2020 season for NC State, earned all ACC honors at both positions. That tells you everything you need to know about the versatility that this kid brings to the offensive line. Off the field, smiling, bespectacled demeanor. Easy for me to say at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. But that hides an absolute savage beast. There's no other way of putting it. You want to see an example of competitive toughness and physicality, stick on Ikem Ekwonu, watch him go to work, not just in pass protection, not just at the first level at the point of attack. Watch him going downfield and leveling guys at the 2nd level, the 3rd level. I think Miami safety Bubba Bolden has still got Ikem Ekwonu's handprint all over his face from an encounter they had, not this season, the season before. Mauler, high school. We talked about Tyler Linderbaum last week, high school wrestling experience. So he's got that wrestling experience. He knows how to win the leverage battle. I think for me, he came into this season as the best, potentially one of the best guards in the class. I looked at his pass protection last year when he was out on an island at left tackle for NC State. I wasn't completely sold on his ability to play left tackle at the next level, but he has kicked it up a gear this year in terms of his pass protection. There's still some room for development. There's still some things you kind of look at and think he could clean up his handwork sometimes, clean up his timing. But overall, I think you're looking at a kid who's got the potential to. Some people are talking about him being a first overall pick. I think that's a little rich for me. But if he escapes out of the top 5, top 10, I'm looking at the New York Giants as a spot for Ike Mekwonu. The New York Jets, depending on what they do with Mekhi Becton going forward, that's a landing spot there. There's plenty of teams that need offensive tackle help within that top 10. Carolina Panthers, for example, all will depend on the quarterback situation. But if Ike Mekwonu escapes the top 10, I think something's gone terribly wrong.
Well, I agree. And the thing that to me is when you look at him, I love the energy that he play as a big man that he plays with. I love the way he plays hard. He plays like a wrestler to me, and has a little bit of the same stuff that Penny has without maybe some of the over the top issues, So I love that guy. Now, hey, here we go. One more time. Where do we got to go to find the best tackle in America, the best tackle in the draft? Well, we might as well just go to Tuscaloosa because they always got one.
They certainly have. Evan Neal is my top-ranked offensive tackle. He's my 3rd overall prospect in the 2022 NFL draft class. And I think if the Jacksonville Jaguars have got anything solid and sound about them, which we know that they haven't, so this probably won't happen, they'll be sticking all their eggs in Evan Neal's basket as far as I'm concerned. Athletic offensive tackle at 6'7.5", 337 pounds. Again, 34-inch arms, 10 and 1/8-inch hands. So the requisites are all there. His footwork is incredible. It allows him to play effortlessly out on the island. He's, as I said, explosive out of his stance. He is plays unlike some of the other guys in this class at his size. He plays with excellent pad level, both in the run game and as a pass protector. Powerful, violent hands. He has got all the versatility in the world that you need. So he's played guard for Alabama. He's played right tackle for Alabama. He's played left tackle for Alabama. And he's played all 3 of those to an elite level in the SEC, like you mentioned, going up against the best week in, week out, but also going up against the best in his own training room, on day-to-day practice field, going up against guys like Will Anderson, who will be one of the top players in next year's NFL draft class. If I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, I take Evan Neal at 1. I plug him in at right tackle this year while Cam Robinson plays out his 1-year franchise tag deal, and then I move him over to left tackle next year. And that's Trevor Lawrence sorted. They invested in free agency on the interior offensive line. They also used the pick on Walker Little last year, who I wasn't so high on. I think you plug in Evan Neal at right tackle in 2022. You switch him over to left tackle next year, and you've got the basis of protecting the quarterback that you invested and want to build this franchise around.
When I watched him play against Florida, and Florida's got players. Now, I'm just telling you, they got athletes, especially edge guys, right?
Yeah.
And I can't remember watching University of Florida players on defense just stop, just like almost give up because it was hopeless. No matter what, you couldn't beat him around the edge, couldn't bully him for certain, couldn't bully him, and try and go speed to power, try and counter back underneath. Anywhere, any attack he handled and almost looked like it was too easy, right? Never crossed his feet. I mean, his footwork is amazing for a guy as big as he is, 6'7.5". I mean, we're talking about guys that are playing power forward in the NBA. I mean, these are amazing people. Ollie, you're my number 1 draft analyst, and that's why we got you here on Coffee with a Coach. But if people are watching the show and they're catching you for the first time, where can they get more of Ollie Hodgkinson?
Okay, so you can find me on Twitter at OJ Hodgkinson. You can find all the written work, podcasts, everything that I do for Pro Football Network at www.profootballnetwork.com. And there you'll find our 2022 NFL Draft Guide as well, which is, with less than a month to go, you need to get that purchased.
Hey, well, listen, what do we got next week? Where are you going next week? What you going to bring to us?
Well, me and Michael were talking about this, right? So we've got less than 4 weeks to the NFL draft, and I think we've still got 6 position groups still to go. So how about next week we spend maybe a little bit longer, but we do the top 5 cornerbacks and top 5 safeties. in one segment.
We're on the dark side,
show.
baby. We're talking DBs
we've still got wide receivers to do as well. But
you know what? I want to save that for later because that's a tasty group, and I think there's going to be a lot of those guys go really fast. So we'll hit the wide receivers. We'll go out of sorts and hit the wide receivers and some of that offensive skill late.
So
appreciate you, my man. We will see you next week.
See you later. Thank you, Jeff. See you,
Great
Michael.
Job.
Cheers, Ollie. All the best, man. That was awesome. Thanks so much to Oliver and obviously Pro Football Network. Check it out.
He really does a good job. He really does a good job. And
I love his enthusiasm for the draft, man. Because I think over here we really need that, to develop. So it's fantastic.
Well, I tell you what, that's the lifeblood of your football team. You got to, again, draft it, sign it, get it in free agency, trade for it, however you get it. But your best way to get a lot of them, if you're a team that needs a lot of players, is the draft. And 7 players minimum in every class. So for most teams, anyway.
Your next guest is here.
All right.
He put some questions in the chat as well, Jeff, so you can use them as well if you want. But
okay, if you would like to get a question to us, or if you would like to get a question to Super Agent Paul Sheehy about anything that Paul does, and particularly about his role in free agency with his clients, be more than happy to answer. Paul's a great guy. One of the most highly intelligent guys in the football business, a guy with a great track record, a great, not just a track record, but a great reputation amongst football people. And he is from ProStar Agency in Denver, Colorado. I'd like to welcome to the show Paul Sheehy. Come on in, Paul. Do we have him? There he is. Where'd he go?
This is the joys of live broadcasting. I'm just going to say to Paul, I'm going to type here now as well. Paul, if you want to just refresh your browser, try your cell phone, I'll bring you in immediately. I don't know what's happening. So apologies, Paul.
If you want to just refresh. That's live TV, baby. That's why we do it this way.
Yes. Yeah, so just when I type, Jeff, hearing rumors, talking about Colorado, hearing rumors, the Jaguars playing the Broncos in Wembley. You hearing this?
There's some talk about that. Yep. So I know I tell you what, you are you're floating every rumor about the Broncos you can to
the team literally came out and said yesterday.
Get the blue and orange to Europe.
They literally came out and said they've asked the NFL to do. I'm just literally saying what they said. Can you imagine? I literally choked on my coffee when I seen that. I'm sure it's fine. If we can't get Paul's video, I'm sure audio will be fine. Paul, can you hear us okay? No?
Have we lost him? Man.
See if it works. I'll put a wee comment in here now just we're chatting. Who's your dream London game, Jeff? You got the Packers and the Saints. Here's Paul here now. Let's see if it works. Paul. No dice.
Who's my dream London game? I'd take any of them. I'd take any of them. But I would like to see a game at Tottenham because I have not seen a game yet at Tottenham. I heard the sight lines and the stadium are absolutely brilliant. So it's anytime you get a chance to see an NFL game, and particularly when you get a chance to see an NFL game outside of the United States, it's a huge deal. Those are still, I say this all the time, but those are the best environments for regular season games in the world, because next to a Super Bowl, you get fans from all over, from every team at those games, and it's really in a unique environment. And I hope to be a part of it again soon.
Hopefully we get Saints Bengals, and hopefully we get Jaguars Broncos and Packers against somebody big. Here's Paul.
Hey guys.
Paul.
There's my man. How are you doing, Coach?
Good. I've got it on my phone, so sorry about it. Hey, so I've got one.
I'm just glad we worked it out.
So I'm with Mr. Styling and Profiling over there, so I brought these.
Hey! All right, now we're working.
I got my Maui gyms on, so I could vicariously be in Hawaii with you. After just leaving Laramie, Wyoming, where it was like 46 for their pro day, and now I'm in freezing cold Fort Collins.
Then I got to ask you a question. All right.
Shoot.
First of all, how long were you in Laramie?
Overnight, as quickly as possible.
Did you? Spoken like a true Colorado.
People are very nice.
Did you happen to get to the Buckhorn Bar?
Dude, I got in. I went to my hotel. I had a steak in the hotel. Went to sleep. Woke up. Went to pro day.
I'll tell you what.
And now I'm in.
next
I'm
time you've got to go to the Buckhorn Bar. You promised
That's a
me
deal.
that you will go. All right.
That's a
Hey,
deal.
is that linebacker at Wyoming? Is he that good?
Oh, Muma, he's really good. I think he's a second day pick, is what I see. Like where that goes, it goes. But I think he's probably a second day pick. He looked really good. What he did is he tried to improve on his 3-cone today. So he
Yeah.
did the 3-cone only, and he might have done one other drill, and then he did all position drills, and he looked really good, really smooth, really good.
I have
So-
heard a lot of good things about that kid. That he might
Yeah.
even be able to be a 3-down linebacker in the National Football League. And there
It
aren't a lot of those
wouldn't
kind of
shock
guys.
me. Yeah, wouldn't shock me.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey, before we get going with free agency and all, talking about all that stuff, I need you. You've been on the show before, and you told the story of the first client you represented and your first.
Oh, jeez.
You tell that story because that's an all-timer, Paul.
Well, it was actually the unofficial one you're talking. I was a junior in college. So my roommate in college at the time, Eddie Meacham, was an All-American tight end, and we were teammates. And we thought he was going to get drafted, but he didn't. And we get a call at our apartment from the Patriots the next day. Hey, can you come on up to Foxborough? We went to college in Massachusetts at Springfield College. And they go, hey, can you come up to Foxborough for a workout? And if it goes well, we want to sign you. So Eddie didn't have a car. So he goes, hey, Paul, can I borrow your car? And I said, oh, heck no. I said, I'm going with you. And my plan was I was going to go work the equipment guy to get a couple pairs of turf shoes because there was a big thing back then, right? And they were expensive as heck. So I drove him up there, and sure enough, he went and did his workout, and he had, Mick Carrigan was throwing him the ball, and I think Tony Easton was there throwing him, and I'm in the equipment room, talking to the equipment guy, ended up with 2 pairs of turf shoes under my arm. And so we're waiting for the GM at the time, and we're waiting right outside of his office, and they call him in. So I just tag along, and I just sit down right next to him. And he's like, well, Eddie, I don't know what to tell you. We can't get a hold of your agent, so we might just put this thing on hold. And Ed just sits there and is like, what am I doing? I said, hey, what are you looking to do? And the guy goes, 3 years, 60, 80, and 100,000. Yeah, just like that.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Come on.
Bill McPeak.
Stop.
Bill McPeak. Swear. What are you looking to do? 60, 80, and 100. And so Ed's ready to jump out of his chair. And I go, what about a little something up front? And he goes, stands up, puts a $100 bill on the table. And we look at each other. Done. And so we filled my car up with gas. And we had an all-you-can-eat seafood buffet down the street from then Sullivan Stadium. And we were living large. Like it was all in. Like that was the greatest day.
That is beautiful. We can't get a hold of your agent.
Yeah. His agent represented a lot of hockey players. And so I'll never forget and by the way, Bill McPeak's secretary at the time is still in New England. She is absolutely, without question, one of my favorite people in the NFL, Nancy Meyer. She is the person. If you've ever read the book The Invisibles, that's her. Like she runs that show. Contrary to everybody's belief, she is amazing with everything she does. But she was there back in the day. And so, so that was it. He represented a lot of hockey players. And I'll never forget, they said, well, he's dealing with the Potvin brothers right now on something big. And we're like, okay, well, we're sitting here in the Patriots GM's office. So
hey, wait a second now. What's bigger than 2 pair of turf shoes, $100, and
a full tank of gas?
Huh?
Yeah, I'm telling you. And that's when I realized, right, like all my life, my goal was I'm going to play in the NFL, right? And it suddenly hit me when I'm in college. Hey, by the way, there really are no 5'9" centers out of D2 schools in the NFL. So I better think of a plan B fast. And so that became the plan B, like from the start. And that was just very fortuitous that it happened with Eddie that time. It was really good.
Now, when you're negotiating all these $1 million deals, $1 million guarantees, I don't know. I mean, I don't even want to ask you what the biggest one you've ever done is, but do you ever shake your head and go, 2 pairs of turf shoes, $100, we're done?
Yeah, all the time. Like all the time. I trust me, I know who I am. I know where I came from, right? And it is. And I remember, early in the day, the first guy I ever asked for $1 million for. Like, it took a lot of planning, and it took like I'm going to with a straight face ask this team for $1 million, and it was Louis Riddick back in the day, and I'll never forget it, and he earned it, and he didn't get it in that deal, but that was the first one I ever asked for $1 million as a single number, not like a total package. So no, trust me, I see the big picture. I know where I am. I know where I'm from. I know this is. I'm blessed to be doing this for 34 years, and I love every minute of it. To be honest with you, the highs are very high, the lows are very low, but the middle is just, it's an amazing thing to be a part of.
As a guy who's done it for 34 years, does the money that's in it now, when you look at some of the contracts, you look at what, say, for example, the Browns did with Deshaun Watson, not only to give him that huge guarantee, but basically shelter him from, losing money with
from year one.
Yeah. Can it stop? Is there an end of it all where it's just so much you can't do it anymore?
God, I hope not. I hope not. Well, like, what's your option though, right? Would you rather see, and this has always been my argument from forever, would you rather see the money divided between 32 billionaire owners or 1,600, players who are the show that everybody goes to see and puts literally their life on the line every game, their health on the line at a minimum? The NFL is 100% injury risk profession. So I don't begrudge these guys one penny. And it is 100% my job to maximize that income while we have the opportunity. And so, no, I mean, as long as those revenues keep growing, that money should be shared with the players. And with the current CBA, everyone slammed this CBA because the players got a smaller share than they had before, but they got a smaller share of a much larger pie. So the raw dollars are exponentially higher. And now we're going to be at 49.5%. No one knew for certain if we were going to get there from 48, but now we included what they call the media kicker in the deal, which is if the TV revenues went up a certain percentage, then the player share went up. We already got it. So, the owners still have a majority share, but the player share went up way more because it's a smaller share, but of a much larger pie. There's no more carve outs. There's no more, this is outside the cap. This is outside. Keep this revenue on your own. It's everything goes in the pot and we share it fairly equally. 49-5, 50, 55.
Paul, how much of that has contributed or gone hand in glove with the player empowerment that you see today that you never saw before, where even non-star players can force club's hand to trade them or move them or whatever, and players have more power, in my opinion, than they've ever had.
Yeah, and I'll take it one step further. How about the power to determine when your career is over financially now? Because you don't have to go back and play that other year. You don't have to go back and put your body at risk for yet another year, right? Ali Marpet just retired from Tampa Bay out of a D3 program, and he goes, I've been in the league 7 years. I've been in the league 7 years. I'm good. I want to be able to run and play with my kids. Financially, he's able to make that decision. So that type of empowerment to me is the bigger name of the game, right? So I think the ability to say, I'm calling it a career on my terms is what the additional money in the league has really helped with. And yeah, it's done the other things as well, right? It's empowered them to do things like, certainly the CBA, you can't hold out any longer. Like, there's no such thing as a holdout, because the fines and penalties are too great. However, what we've now seen is there's a hold in where players report and just don't play. So they avoid that whole thing. So withholding services is always 100% of the time the biggest leverage that you have. And when you've got a pool of income behind you to support that in case the worst case scenario comes together, then sure, you're going to be able to hold that position longer and stronger.
Right. Now, for you guys, your agency certainly has high-profile active players. You've got a number of high-profile coaches, and you're involved with kids that are in this draft class. So this is a really interesting time of the year for you, because you're still working some free agency deals, and you're waiting to strike while the iron's hot with who's left in free agency, the draft's coming, and so on and so forth. What's your typical day like now?
Yeah. So again, every day is different, and so this period of time from basically the new year through right around now, this week, next week, when pro days are coming to a close, it's like this harmonic convergence of coaches hiring cycle and the end of recruiting, which is kind of a perpetual thing anyway. Recruiting is just 24/7, 365. And then you've got pro days, and then pre-draft stuff, and then draft stuff, and then post-draft stuff. In the middle of that is free agency. And so like everything kind of comes together. And I think, experience is the best thing that gets you through that, because we know how to compartmentalize that. And really time management is huge, but it's also the most exciting time of the year. Like it's awesome. It's all these things that we are in this business to do. We get to do them all at once during this time of year. So it's pretty cool.
One of your clients, who is a guy that I know extremely well, has actually been on the show, and love the kid because he, to me, is one of the guys that should be making money. He's plays at Montana State, not drafted, spends a little time on the Seahawks practice roster. They let him go, comes up to Canada, plays, 3 or 4 years in Canada, has a great career in Canada, goes to the Eagles as a free agent. You guys get him to the Eagles. And the last 2 years he's in Philadelphia, leads the team, over 200 tackles, highest rated linebacker on production. His production grade was amazing. When I saw that, Darius Leonard, I don't care who you named, he
number one in the NFL in tackle and productivity, his overall productivity, meaning he was in on a tackle on 19.1% of the plays that he played, and he only played in 64% of the snaps over the last 2 years, which is phenomenal. And when you talk about other guys that have played 90, 97, those kind of ranges, his production is right there with them. So his single per play production is off the charts. It's the best of any backer in the league.
Well, and I, when we did Inside the Huddle last week, I said that to Neil. I said, I'm going to tell you something. Here's, I think, one of the really cagey signings of the entire free agency period. Alex Singleton going to the Broncos is a huge one to me because it fits a need for the Broncos. The kid will be a dynamic kid in that defense. He'll be outstanding in the community. He'll be everything that the Broncos want. And, he's back playing, a Montana State kid. Come on now. You can't. It's such a great fit.
Yeah. So his free agency period was very interesting. So we might not have gotten, the big splash free agent dollars for him, because what happens with the restricted free agency guys is teams, obviously they get to tender them and they get to retain their rights and they get to match a deal. And Philly decided, we had tried to get a deal done and we just couldn't. And outside of the tender, they didn't want to tender him. So by the time we knew that they were not going to tender him, it's very late in the game. And so teams don't prepare for those RFAs. Like the RFA market is a myth. There is no market. If you're a tendered RFA guy, restricted free agent guy, the chances of you getting an opportunity to sign an offer sheet is so remote. I'll give you the numbers. Since 2008, you ready? Since 2008, 26 players have gotten offer sheets as restricted free agents. 26, including this year, Ryan Bates from Buffalo, who got an offer sheet from Chicago. Of those guys, 11 were matched by their old teams and 15 moved. So there really is no market for that guy. So that's number one. Number two, when you're not tendered as that, you hit the market very late, because they literally have until 4 p.m., until the minute before free agency starts, to decide whether to tender you or not. So we found out very late that they were not going to tender him. So a non-tendered RFA automatically has a depressed market to begin with financially. That some of the teams, one team I talked to said, wow, are you sure? Are you sure he's not going to be tendered? And I said, yeah, I just got confirmation. They said, wow, because we just graded 26 linebackers and he wasn't in our group because we thought no way in the world he's going to be available. So we didn't even do any homework on the guy yet. So what we look at is, okay, the market, and not to mention in his particular case, this was a really interesting period. the whole ILB market was saturated. Like there's still great linebackers, great inside guys who are on the market, like Bobby Wagner, right? And there's a bunch of those guys. So we said, all right, our best bet is to go somewhere where you're going to be comfortable, you're going to have a big role, and you're going to have the biggest opportunity to make an impact. And then we know as an entering UFA, the whole game changes, or we're with a team that we trust will value the position, so we get an extension done. And so looking through literally dissecting 32 teams, Denver was the number one team that we wanted to be in if we could get to that spot where we had a deal. So it worked out. And you know, I don't think I'm speaking out of school, and he wouldn't mind me saying, like, he turned down 2 other offers that were higher financially, looking more big picture to get in the right environment, the right place, the right role, and where he wanted to be. Looking forward, I think it's going to be a great move that he made.
See, now this is something that I think is really important. And you know, I'm not blowing sunshine up your tailpipe when I say this. When you guys deal with somebody, there are more factors than just pure dollars and cents that you weigh into this thing. And that's one of the reasons why I think Alex is such a great fit there, because he's going to be productive. We know he's going to be productive. He fits in the scheme. There's a lot of things to really like about it. And so
he played in that scheme last year. Like
exactly
what Ajiri is bringing in from LA to Denver is essentially the same defense that he just ran in Philly. And that was a big consideration, right? He knows the role. He knows exactly what he's going to be asked to do. And I think that's huge. I think you're stepping into something where there's a degree of familiarity already. The comfort level alone allows you to perform at a higher level.
Right. And it's not, you know, it's the next deal. It's always the next deal.
The next deal. Yes. Yes.
So
100%.
Tell me, when you get into this free agency thing and you got an older player, right, who's been an established player, because as I understand contracts, and again, I don't pretend to know, but really you're always paying for what the guy did, not what he does now, right? So when you've got an older guy, Paul, how do you approach it with a club, even though your player may be in that descending?
Yeah, it's tricky, and I think every team handles that differently. You know, we've heard it before from teams. I don't want to buy high, right? I don't want to buy on a guy's career year, and then you just need to know the market, and you need to know whether, well, somebody else is going to, and I know who. Like if you don't have that, there's a negotiating term called BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement, right? And if you don't know what your BATNA is, what your best alternative is, then you're sunk. You always need to know what, if I don't get this deal done, is it better not to get it done and do deal B here? Or is it better to just do deal A, even though it's not what I want? So you need to know those things. And so you need to say, well, you may feel like you're buying high and you don't want to get in this game at this financial level, but I know another team, and you don't even have to say it. Like you could just say, well, thank you for your time. I'm going elsewhere. And you know another team is going to, you know, get you to the level you need to be at. It really comes to knowing the market and communicating with teams and, you know, really trying to be as open and transparent as you can on both sides.
You know,
so it's tricky. It's tricky. And so we have a situation now. I'll tell you right. So we have a situation now. We had it with Cam Wake. They you know, when you go up to Canada, the good and the bad, you go up to Canada, and Alex is the same guy, right? Alex went up there for a couple of years. So when Cam came down, he was a couple of years older already because he was out of football for a year, and then he goes up to Canada for 2, so he comes down. By the time he hit his stride free agency, you know, the big thing teams wanted to jump on, the only negative they could possibly come up with is, well, he's older and da-da-da. So you just need to know how you deal with that. And again, for me, you got to know that there's another team out there that you can get what you're looking for one way or another, whether it's average per year, whether it's, for me, it's always guarantee. I'll always give up the average per year number. I'll give that up to get more guarantees, like always. So it's whether you negotiate better guarantees, maybe on a shorter deal, better guarantees, you know, in a lower APY, that kind of thing. We're dealing with it now with a really good, and specialists are a little different, but we've got one of the top punters of all time, 17-year veteran in Dustin Colquitt. We just did Johnny Hecker's deal in Carolina, which was a phenomenal deal. Again, guaranteed dollars drove the day on that. We had a bunch of teams interested, and we had like really good. There were two teams almost identical numbers, but with Dustin now, he's a 17-year vet, and teams are like, well, I don't know if I want to extend long on this now, but we know, hey, let's just sit tight. We don't need to be somewhere in March. I don't need you to be in an off-season workout program with a new team in March. Let's just sit tight, because when teams think that they have a need filled, or they think they're going to fill a need, and it doesn't happen, it happens all the time, this scenario, they're going to be looking for, okay, now we need that safe veteran. We know what we're going to get.
Right.
And you'll be the first guy to be signed in a really good place where you walk in and it's your job. So that's kind of what we're looking at with that kind of situation.
And we obviously, there's some things we're sensitive. You can't use names and that. But do you feel that there's panic buying out there sometimes in free agency, where there's a need, it's an established need, and the media drives the perception of the general fan, and the general fan says, oh, we've got to have a guy at that position. Right. They miss on a guy, and now, oh shit, we got to go get somebody.
So first, I hate playing scout, and I think, and a lot of agents do, and if it works for them, it works for them. But I'd rather talk to scouts, let them do their thing. I hate playing scout. So when I look at and evaluate guys, unless I'm doing a head-to-head comparison for my particular negotiation, like, I don't say this, but one thing that comes to mind when you say that is Christian Kirk's deal. Like, Jacksonville needed a receiver. Everybody knows that, and they went out day one. They paid a guy with 17 career touchdowns and really a number 2 receiver. They paid him $37 million guaranteed, $18 million a year on an average, and I think that opened a lot of eyes. And I'm not saying that it was good or bad. Like, time will tell. When I'll never forget that the old general manager for the 49ers years ago, I called him, hey, Neil Dolan was his name. Great person. I said, hey, congratulations. Great draft. He goes, great draft. He says, call me in 3 years and tell me that. And then we got something. And I think that's kind of what free agency is like too, right? So there's hits, there misses. But I think when you see those things, the drastic jumps in compensation for guys, drastic. And the expectation of more production than what you've got. I think some people interpret that as desperation. Some people interpret that as great scouting and foresight. So time will tell. I don't know.
You know what? It's funny.
I never begrudge a team that spends money.
Paul,
right?
That's the guy I was thinking about. That's exactly the contract I was thinking about, because, I look at it and I understand there's some clauses in the contract that they can kind of get out of it if they need to, but what that does to me is it sends, like every other guy that's got a receiver goes, thank you.
I love it when guys, they're going, oh my gosh, whenever you hear like the casual fan or these sports radio shows, what are they doing this much money? I'm like, oh my gosh, good for him. Like, great job by his agent. Good for him, because that helps everybody. And I think the biggest shift we've seen in this free agent market is at that position. It's at the wide receiver position. So up to last year, I think we had one. I think Julio Jones was the only $20+ million receiver, 20 on an average, right? He was at 22, and he's out of football. Like, he's not even signed right now, but he was at 22 million last year. And then what's his name? DeAndre Hopkins comes in, and he signs a deal for 24 million. Kind of raises that bar again. But then there were like 3 guys over 20 million a year, and now all of a sudden we've got Amari Cooper at 20. We got Keenan Allen. We got DJ Moore, Mike Williams, Chris Godwin, all guys at 20 million. And then we've got, oh, by the way, we're going to trade Devontae Adams, and he's going to get a new deal at 28 a year. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to trade for Tyreek Hill, and he's now at 30 a year. Yeah, so exactly. The shift in the receiver market, to me, was the biggest sea change we've seen, in this free agency period anyway, as I see it.
Now, like you and I have been around the game for a long time, right? And one of the things that you can say about college football, and you can certainly say it about the National Football League, is it's a copycat game. You run the wishbone at Texas, and then all of a sudden Oklahoma's doing it, then 80 teams in America are doing it. Then all of a sudden, it's the next thing, then the next thing.
By the way, even if you don't have the personnel to run it, there are still coaches who want to run
exactly,
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the way to win, right?
Yeah.
Same thing now. I see in the National Football League, draft a quarterback, get him in his rookie contract, build around it. That was the Josh Allen deal, right? But then the Rams go the other direction and say, no, we're going to trade those first round picks for a proven commodity in Matthew Stafford to come in and elevate our team and to be Super Bowl champion. How much do you think what Les Snead has done there with I'm not saying discounting first round picks, but certainly devaluing. And I'm going to tell you something. If you just use the analytics, you would say that what's the percentage of hitting on a first round quarterback? About 40%.
Right. I don't think he's devaluing it at all. I think he's saying my decision point, my tipping point is surety. How sure am I that somebody I'm going to pick in that first round is going to give me the same benefit, whether it's production or at the end of the day really wins, versus somebody who I've seen in this league play for long enough. I already know what he could do at this level. How many years do we go through the drafts where this guy is the best ever and this guy could be the best ever, and like you don't hear from him 4 years later, you don't even know who they are. His position is, I'm going to go with something I know. And so what would you give up as a team owner or a GM to have the best chance to win a Super Bowl? Would you give up your first round draft picks? I'd give them all up. It's like 100%. But it's not a model for everybody, because it also comes down to who that guy is, who that player is. Like, there are teams that just go out and buy free agents, and we've seen that doesn't solve anything. Jacksonville this year, let's see. Time will tell, right? But Jacksonville just set a record. They just set a record with giving out $175.3 million in guarantees this offseason alone to contracts, right? They went out day one, seven unrestricted free agents. They broke the Patriots record from 2021 where they spent $163 million in guarantees. So did they sign the right players? I don't know. We'll see. If they did, that's the best $175 million Shad Khan has ever guaranteed in his life. And if they didn't, then they're still back in that cycle of trying to find guys. So it's more about player selection. And when you're talking young guys, it's a different path as well. Player development is the key to that. It's not just picking the great guy out of college. The great guy out of college isn't always the great guy in the NFL. It's, do you have a defined plan for this guy? Can you develop him and get him from the great college guy to the great pro guy? If you've got that infrastructure built into, whether it's your coaching staff, your administration, your ownership, then part of that is patience. Part of it also is knowing when to push and when not to push. Like, there's a lot of factors. So just signing the best college pick a position guarantees you nothing if you don't have a plan for that guy. And if he also doesn't fit, and fit could be a million different things, right? If he doesn't fit, whether it's a locker room fit, it's a scheme fit, whatever it is. So that's what I think. I think Les Snead and Tony Pastores with the Rams are two of the smartest people in the league, and a league full of a lot of smart people. And they just decided to do it a little bit differently. And honestly, they hung it out there, right? They hung it out there. And they're, going to be passing out Super Bowl rings in June. So
I tell you, it is a lot more than collecting football cards, my man.
Oh my God.
Hey, Michael, come on in and talk to Paul.
Hello.
Paul, I don't know if I know you talked to Mike on the phone and spent, some time on Zoom and Twitter with him, but he is maybe one of the biggest Broncos fans in the whole world. Now,
Jeff,
I'm asking you as a native of Denver, right? Give my man some hope that he's going to see his blue and orange win.
I've plenty of hope. It's all good. It's all good.
You should. I think George Payton is really smart and really good at what he does. I think the staff they've assembled is really good. I think, going out and again, Jeff, they could have drafted yet another quarterback, yet another pick a name, Brock Osweiler or Drew Lock or whomever over the years, or they said, okay, well, it's going to cost us, but you know what? We kind of know what we're getting. So they filled that need at quarterback with one of the top tier quarterbacks in the league, like hands down. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons to be very optimistic about this team. Very.
You've made his complete day. I'm just telling you that right now. Michael, we got any questions for Paul?
Yeah, we got one from Nathan in London saying, Paul, what's the hardest thing about being an agent?
Recruiting. I think that's hard because we've got, so do the math. There's 1,600 NFL players, and there's about just under 1,000, and there's been over 1,000 NFL PA certified agents. So you kind of never know where your competition's coming from, and I've learned over the years on that aspect of it. I could care less, honestly. We just stay in our lane. We do what we do. We take care of our own house. And that's kind of how we do it. We're not everybody's cup of tea. We're not the flash and dash group. Never have been, never will be. But also, it's why we have a really tight-knit group of clients. I've represented over 600 guys over the years. And the recruiting is still, obviously, it's the most, challenging part of it, I think. But other than that, like, I get to talk to teams and talk football all day long. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I love that.
Especially when you're a 5'9" DB from Maine and a 5'9" center from Springfield.
Amen. Hey, self-awareness is a huge thing, Jeff. So at least I realized it in college and not afterwards. So
absolutely. Paul, it's been a pleasure as always having you on the show. Thank you so much for giving us some insights into the whole free agency and the agent deal. And I'd love to have you back anytime you want to come back.
Anytime at all, guys. You got it. Talk to you soon.
All the best, Paul. Thanks.
Take care, Mike.
Aloha. Thank you.
Got it. Mike, come on this year.
Oh, sorry, Paul. What's up?
Come out to Denver for a game this year.
Well, apparently they're coming to London. So, I mean, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, Paul, to do London, Denver, and then Arizona in February, for the Broncos. But
Jeff,
it was a joke.
I'll
try and get over.
You either find a way or you find an excuse. So
that's it. There you go. There you go.
I'm just telling you, my season tickets in Denver are right on row 1 behind the visitor bench. So you're invited when you come here.
That's incredible. Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. And here, hopefully see you soon.
You got it. Take care, guys.
Man.
Thanks, Paul. All the best, man.
Thank you.
Man, it doesn't get any better, does it?
What a great guy.
Yeah, well, you go from Michael from Dublin to Michael in the first row behind the visitors bench in Mile High Stadium.
Not to make this more, and obviously thanks to Paul for coming up. It was fantastic. It was a really, really good chat for any fan listening to that, trying to learn about the game. Not to keep it on the Broncos, but there's big talk from Monday morning quarterback, football morning in America, that the Rams-Broncos is going to open the season. The big rumors happening in SoFi. So that's what I've heard this week. That's all I have, Jeff. That's all I have. I have your Hawaiian segment ready to go. I have your Sky Sports segment ready to go. Have you any crack or any news for me before we hit the road, Jack, or what's the?
Nope, just glad. It's awesome to have you again back with us, and I'm glad you're healthy. I know you played hurt the last week, and it's good to have you back fighting through the morass of COVID or whatever that stuff was you had.
Wow,
just keep it over there in Ireland, will you?
Well, I mean, it's a bit hard to do that now, but we'll see what we can do. Here's your Sky segment. Do you want to introduce it very quickly?
Yeah, what we do is go back to some of the stuff that we've done. We call it from the meeting room segment, and it's about teams that we watch on Sky Sports NFL and breaking the game down to help educate the fans about how the game is really played and schematically how you do certain things. Today, it's about the Rams run defense and what we call gap cancellation. And that's where everybody is responsible for a gap and how they use 7-man fronts to play 8-man front defense, which is single gap defense.
Neil, when you play run defense, you talk about gap cancellations, and we define the gaps as this, all right? It's A, B, C, and then anything outside of that is D gap. Now, what's amazing to me is that you see the Rams have to play 7 gaps and only have 6 people. So there's no way on 3rd and 1 that they should be able to convert this, right? But watch what you've got 3 backups in here, right? You got Young, all right, you got Higgins, and you got Ashawn Robinson, and I want you to see how well coached they are as I run this. Look at right there. Now, if you notice, where are their hands? They're inside, their helmets are underneath, hands inside, hands inside. So again, you've got 6 guys effectively able to play 7 gaps, and really, really, really a nice job. They bring a secondary player late to leverage the ball here, and then Reeder will leverage it here, and now Young will be right there. And that is really, really about as good as you can play gap cancellation defense. Low man wins, hands inside, take your gap, squeeze it to the adjacent gap.
Love to watch.
There he is.
Love to watch me some football, and we're going to do that all through the off season. So if you get Jones in for a little technical football, just be with Coffee with the Coach, because we'll take you to the meeting room every week.
Here's just to close out the show, here's the Hawaiian segment. I couldn't put because it's just, you'll see why in a second.
Is a Hawaii moment. This is the end of our street, and that right there is a full-fledged wild hog, which they hunt on this island. And look at the babies. Right here on the Big Island. Ain't no place like the Big Island. So if you like pork, you can get your bacon here.
Big Island,
Oh my God.
Hawaii, one of the only places where the pork delivery is done by the pig. He brings it right to your house. That's just right outside our house here.
On that note, I'll see you next week. Yeah. Here, that was good crack. Obviously, for everyone listening to the podcast, please leave a review. Give Jeff 5 stars. We're going to try and get a big guest on over the next few weeks. Maybe WrestleMania this weekend. We can get the Nature Boy on. Let's see what we can do. See if we can maybe. Oh,
as a matter of fact, that's a
woo. Any final words? Are you happy enough, Jeff? Yeah, all good.
Just want to say thank you to everybody that watches, and again, hit us up, let us know what you're thinking, and we'll continue to keep driving to make the show better each week.
Awesome, Jeff. I will see you next week. Mahalo, folks.